today's topic is captioning and labeling. And what that basically means is what is available on all websites, web shops, the description of a product, usually based on the visual appearance of a product, but not only that. And we also apply some captioning techniques in order to achieve, for example, shop the look and so on, which we will discuss in a different episode. But in general, what can be done with captioning and labeling with AI, Steffen?
Yeah, let's have a look. So there are different use cases, as you already mentioned. So, I mean, of course, the big sales description, that one we will talk a bit more about in the end. But there are also other use cases, and that we have also that are not necessarily customer facing, but we often need different kind of descriptions or captions for training of other models, or also sometimes about sort of gluing different models together and then build something bigger. For example, shop the look, that we will talk, I think, in another episode. So, and today I want to show some different approaches how we generally can create captions based on images of fashion items or outfits also. So there are 3 ways, and I want to start about that. I mean, with the first one, that is basically what I'm saying here, classifier based. What does that mean? So it means that sometimes, here are some examples, sometimes you just need, say, a short caption that is really to the point. Let's say, okay, there is an image. Let's maybe have a look at one. Now let's pick this one. So let's say you have this item, and now you just need a kind of short expression like what is in this picture. So here, for example, you could say blue sports shirt or something like this. So how that can be done generally very in a straightforward way is we talked about classifiers before, and then often you have already labels on this image. For example, you know the color, so let's say blue, and then you know also if there's a pattern, it's a striped shirt or not, or there's a print, or you also know the category, so it's a shirt. And then what you can simply do is to smartly just simply combine all these different attributes together, and then you already get a caption. So here, color black plus the pattern floral and category shirt. Then you basically get that. There's, in that sense, not much magic needed, and it's a very straightforward approach also.
But this is basically what we talked about in the episode about classifiers. So you basically upfront need to train the classifier model on this particular labels or tags, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So in our case, we have a lot of different classifiers. So each classifier is basically responsible for figuring out one of these. And then we have these attributes saved. And then we just combine them into one text together, basically. So, and the nice thing is, I mean, often you already have that data to some degree, and then you just need to add some classification, and then you get this. It's also very predictable, and especially for certain tasks. So we are using this actually now a lot to train a new model for Shop the Look, especially. And then if you are processing potentially millions of images, I mean, reliable sounds usually very good. So that's what you want to have. And then, I mean, an approach like this is very straightforward. So that's why I'm mentioning it here. But then, so that's the basic. So then there are some different approaches which now include models that were particularly trained on that task, the task of captioning an image. So I've prepared some to start with. Let's look at Blip 2. It's a model that Salesforce created. And what's maybe important to know is a bit also the time here. So a lot of these models, they kind of emerged in a time before, let's say, something like GPT or Claude, all the big language models. They were not yet really capable of processing images. So they were just text-based. And that's where a lot of these models, they came up because, well, I mean, Salesforce, I guess they also have a large base where they can use something like this. So they created this kind of model, which is just for the purpose of looking at an image and then creating a caption. So here already you see an example, San Francisco Bay, but we can, of course, try that with our own images. So let's actually pick that shirt here. And then you can give it here, it says question, so you can give it a bit of a task description also if you want. You don't need to do that, so you can just remove that. And then it will just go straight ahead and create a caption for this image. Takes a moment, as usual. One important thing here to have in mind, though, is that this model it's not particularly trained for fashion per se. So it is for images in general. And this is what you get. A Puma t-shirt in blue and white. So it even figured out the logo in this case. And it's quite to the point. Mm-hmm. Let's try something a bit more complex. So let's try this one. Difference here is, we have a model. In this case, it's a dress, so it's also an outfit in that sense. Let's see what it does here. And here already we see a bit of a difference. So here it says the model is wearing a pink floral print shirt dress. So the last part, sounds about right. The beginning is, and that depends now a bit what you want to use this caption for. So it's a bit of a, I don't know how to say it. It's not totally technical, but it's also not really a sales description, I would say. So it's kind of describing the general appearance of that image as such. So it says, okay, there's a model and the model is wearing something, which is generally right. But depending on your use case, that part here, the model is wearing, might be a bit strange maybe. Yep. So as I said, you have here the ability where it says question, you can steer it a little bit. So you can say, describe the fashion item in detail. So let's see if that, So now now it really focuses more on the item itself, not so much, it doesn't mention the model anymore. So that's one way how you can steer it. So there's this model, it's kind of a classic, let's say. Then there is Lava.
Sorry, what's the drawback or limitation of this model?
I would say the limitation of it is that you have not that much, it's somewhere in between what we will talk about later. You can steer to some degree, but also then again, not that much. Mm-hmm. So you kind of need, if what it spits out is exactly what you need, then it's good. Mm-hmm. However, it is sometimes you might want to have that a bit more formatted, maybe differently. And then, you're a bit limited in how much you can actually steer it. Okay. Also, then sometimes, when it comes to fashion, it's maybe not so sophisticated in the details, let's say like this.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I guess it will become a little bit more evident when we see the more advanced possibilities soon.
I think so. So we can maybe just show another example. It's very similar Lava, actually. Can use the same image. Let's first do without, actually we need a prompt, so describe the fashion item. Also then sometimes, you see already here we are already getting much longer descriptions. So that's maybe also a bit of a difference, sort of how they have been trained. So Lava tends to be a bit more wordy, let's say. Mm-hmm. So here that's the whole story. Fashion item, it's a floral dress. True. Dress is long, has a flowing design, so it comments much more on the looks. And here that's also interesting. So it basically mentions also the background. So okay, there's a white background. Objectively, that's true. For a lot of use cases, it's though completely irrelevant, I would say. So that is also have something in mind. And it is a bit more, let's say, it puts a bit more interpretation in here, I would also say. So here's, it tries to reason. So it says, okay, there's a background, and that background highlights the colors, etc. Mm-hmm. Which, for a lot of use cases, probably don't need that information.
Especially for the pure product description, it might be too much, especially if you have multiple images. You might not be interested in a specific detailed description about this particular image in that sense. But then there might be cases where it also makes very much sense in the production process, when photographing these, and you want to have this description about the photos so that you can make them searchable.
Yeah, that is actually one use case also. You mentioned searchable. Yeah, that you sometimes it makes sense to have certain, a text description that is not really visible to the user in the end, but that you have that still attached to the product data just to improve your search, because it adds more kind of keywords. So if you just focus on text-based search, then that can help. That if, let's say, the user enters a certain keywords, that they are actually appearing in this sort of hidden description. Yeah, for that kind of purpose, that can actually be good. Or maybe that's what you meant also for, okay, and now I just want to find all the images that I took with a white background. Yes, then having that in here, that can then help for that.
Exactly.
Exactly. So these are two classics. They're also available for quite a while now. I mean, quite a while in terms of machine learning is not that long actually, but they've been around. This is a very new model, Florence. It's actually from Microsoft. And I just added it here because it also has, it's a very interesting model generally. I can show that very soon. Let's first do the same thing. So that same image. And then you see, I give it the task caption and say go. The interesting thing about this model is that it has a lot of different things that it can do combined in one model. So it's a very, very versatile model. It's very much focused on everything about visual analysis of images, let's say. And one of them is captioning. So here we see, okay, I mean, this you can disregard. That usually you can easily filter out. So it says, woman in pink dress standing in front of a white background. So also this one mentions the background because it does not, it doesn't really know that we are very interested in the fashion. So generally it just describes the image as such.
Yeah, but maybe it's a good point in time to mention that although these models are available and that we're using them in various ways in our solutions, it does require certain direction and tuning them, so to say, so that they spit out the right thing that you want and that you need. So that should probably be highlighted.
Yeah, that's true. And that's also why I said in the beginning, this very straightforward, simple approach using just the classify properties. That is what is so nice about it. You don't need to fiddle around with tuning anything. It's just so straightforward. Of course, it's limited in its way. But for a lot of things, that's exactly just what you need. And the more advanced...
And because we've really heard that there are a lot of brands that are employing, let's say, interns or more junior people just to tag various items. And I think this could be in let's say in the worst case be used as a verification. Did they tag it correctly? Is there any anomalies? Or potentially also if you have the classifiers way, more or less 100% accurate in labeling it properly automatically, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's look here. What's interesting about the Florence, the model here, is that it actually has 3 different captioning tasks. So you see here, caption, that's the one we just used, and then they actually provide 2 more. So one is detailed and the other one is more detailed. So they kind of thought about that. And then, okay, this is the detailed one. We also see, it's already quite a bit more.
Can you read it out just briefly?
Yeah, model standing against the white background, wearing a pink floral print shirt dress. The dress has a collared neckline here, short sleeves, true. Full skirt that falls to the model's ankles. That is actually incorrect. So that also have to something in mind. Sometimes they make up things or don't see them correctly. So that is definitely wrong. The fabric is lightweight and has a subtle sheen. Yeah, you can see that, giving it a luxurious feel. And that is also something I think that's important to highlight, that sometimes they tend to give this kind of interpretation. It's sort of what you would maybe expect in a sales description. So basically a reasoning that a certain property of that fabric now, has a certain look to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in this case, it argues, okay, this feels luxurious. Might be right in your perspective, but that is a thing. I mean, as a brand, you might have your own ideas, where you have to be careful that the model kind of speaks in the language or in the same reasoning like you would reason about your brand and your designs, generally speaking. Print is vibrant and eye-catching, adding a touch of femininity to the look. And also that part, it's a bit already more interpretation, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Is there a mechanism to like customize or train or fine tune this model so that it takes your brand perspective into consideration?
Yeah, so I mean, especially Florence, this model here, you can also fine tune yourself. We haven't done that, so I cannot speak from experience. I only read articles from others who did these things with Florence. So to some degree, it is trainable, yeah. So you would probably give it, well, images that you have of your previous products, and then maybe, I mean, if you want to train it on sales descriptions in your kind of tone of voice, then you give that together with the sales descriptions you produced, and then I think it would be able to talk more in your brand voice, yeah. And just to mention, I find it just very interesting about this model generally. So just to point that out. So you see, I mean, besides captioning, it can do so many different things, which are, of course, a bit unrelated. But then again, they can also be quite useful, maybe, just to show that. So it can also, for example, now I selected object detection. So it can even find now here different areas in the image that are interesting. So here's the footwear. It gives you the boxes. Etc. And also this can also be fine-tuned. So it's a very versatile model. And also it's actually very small. I mean, you might have noticed that actually it's very fast in producing these outputs. So that's, I'm really starting to like that one.
Cool.
All right, so then maybe we can wrap up these are the models that are particularly created for that kind of task. And then of course, nowadays, the big language models, they also support vision. So, I mean, nowadays you would call that multimodal model. I want to focus on Google Gemini. That would work similarly with GPT as well, or we have Claude. They work very much in the same way. The output tends to be always a bit different. They all have their own flavor. I think just in regards to time, let's focus on this one. Especially, I think what makes Gemini Flash, that's the one we use, it's the smallest of the Gemini models. But what's very interesting about it is simply because it's so small, it's also one hand fast, but also very cost effective, actually. So that's why I like to show it. All right, let's just start. So generally that interface works very similar to what you would know from ChatGPT, roughly. So you can just give it an image. Let's again use the same one. And then now it's very freeform. So you basically have to know to tell it what you want. So let's say, again, describe. Actually, I can zoom in a bit. Oh, so I thought. Describe the fashion item. And I will just let everything default. We can talk about some of the things here after. All right, so then here's the output. This is a floral print dress. It has a collared neckline and short sleeves, and it is made of a woven fabric. The dress is knee length. That is actually right this time. So not ankle, but knee length. It's true. And has a
That's
loose...
because it's been trained better than the previous model, right?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it is it is the smallest of the Gemini models, but it's still, in that sense, much larger. So it does, let's say, like this, it is more advanced computationally than the previous one. So that's probably why it got that better. Also because it has seen, I think, probably more examples generally. So Gemini generally is still a very big model, so to say. So yeah, I mean, that generally sounds about right. Now I want to point out some important things, though, to consider. So first of all, yeah, I mean, this is the description we got. Generally, not too bad. Sometimes, now again, of course, you might want to have something that's a bit shorter. So more like what we had in the beginning. But then you can, I mean, usually what works well is to just simply say, be concise. And then run it again. So then you see it's already more straight to the point. And if we want to be even more, so basically, if we want to replicate what we had in the very beginning, this really, okay, flowery dress or something like this, then you can also, usually what works well with them, to give an example simply. So you say, okay, for example, blue striped t-shirt. So this is not just an example, not about that image, but generally. And this is more to give it sort of the format that you want to expect in the end. And then you see, I mean, it follows. So floral print dress. So that is the way how you can sort of mold the output in the way you want it.
Exactly. And I guess you could even then provide in this context which colors that it can pick from, which patterns it can pick from, and categories of products that you can pick from, right? In case you need to be very specific later on in your systems.
Yeah, exactly. So now I want to try. Okay. Now one thing to consider generally with these, especially the large language models, is now you see I regenerated that response. Now you get a bit one which is a bit different. So floral dress now, and if I now do this again, you see they are still somewhat the same, but also not. So it's always a bit of variation. That is an important thing to have in mind. You have here something called temperature, which you can use to steer that a little bit. So basically what temperature means is the more temperature you give it, the more, I mean, in quotes, creative it gets. So for some use cases, especially later, I mean, sales description, that is actually what you might want to have a bit more to the right. If you want to be more, okay, it should generally more repeat the same thing. I mean, you want to be more deterministic, then you need to put the temperature like very to the bottom. But even then, it's important to have in mind that even then it's not 100% deterministic, which means sometimes if you do that often enough, and you see now it already follows much, much better, so it's much more the same. Yet it's not a 100% guarantee. Sometimes you might still get one which is just slightly different. And that is, again, the difference between at the very beginning when we talked about the classifiers and stuff. They are always 100% the same. While this here, yeah, it can always differ a little bit.
Will you show an example of the salesy description and guide it in a certain tone as well?
Yeah, sure. So let's just start very straightforward, right? Sales description for the shown fashion item. Let's go. So now we get something that sounds already a bit more, well, salesy. This floral printed dress is perfect for any occasion. So here it already starts with selling it. Okay, thinking about occasions and these kind of things. Made from a lightweight and comfortable fabric, this dress is sure to keep you cool and stylish all day long. The flattering fit and feminine details make it a great choice for any wardrobe. It is a versatile piece that can be dressed up or down, paired with sandals for a casual look or heels for a more sophisticated style. So here are some things, again, to consider, and that is, again, your brand tone of voice, these kind of things. So because it makes here already certain assumptions, and is creative in its own way. So it, for example, says here, pair it with sandals for a casual look. So you might agree with that, but you might also not. That is the thing to be careful with, that if you just let it loose, it will come up with something, but that might not be exactly what you maybe agree with or your brand agrees with. Also, yeah, flattering fit. Sure, you can argue is that flattering or not, but I mean, just have that in mind, that it adds these kind of interpretations.
And I guess to some extent, again, it would be possible to say, for example, and then give some previous descriptions.
Yeah, or you can also, and that is something that now relates to, I think, what we will talk in some episodes ahead, complete the look. I mean, to basically give styling advice. So I think to some, actually, I've never tried this, let's try it, but you can, I think, to some degree also say here simply, if you know, let's say you have a system or in the data, you actually have the information, okay, this can be perfectly be paired with, let's come up with something random, can be perfectly paired with red sneakers. Then let's see what happens. Okay, that's actually funny. So here it resists. It says, I have no idea about outfits, so to say. It is not possible to pair. So
that's interesting. Who did teach or tell that it's not possible to pair dress with red sneakers? Interesting.
So I think we can work around that. We think mention this in the description. So I can try to convince it. Yeah, it still has its own. It still thinks it's funny, but it now it follows and tries to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, one thing to keep in mind also is if you know the material, for example, which these type of, let's say, visual models, AI models cannot figure out. So you would say to it, it is 30% polyester and 70% cotton and so on. And it would actually understand those materials' properties and be able to embed that in a nice way in the sales description.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm not totally making something up, but let's try that. So we say, okay, it actually has 90% polyester, 10% organic cotton. Let's see what it makes out of that. So now it mentioned that, so made from a comfortable blend of polyester and organic cotton. So now it incorporated that. So yes, if you have that information, you can basically all put that into what is usually called the context of this. And then it will try to merge that all together. And then also, I actually had that prepared. Here I have, these are actually some actual descriptions I found on e-commerce websites. So let's pick this one, for example. So then you can also say, here is an example.
Shouldn't you remove the we think?
I can still keep it.
So you're writing, here's an example, use the same tone of voice. And then when in doubt, wear a t-shirt. You can never go wrong with a t-shirt. A perfect choice for a cool and timeless look. Wear this t-shirt with nice boyfriend jeans and add a pair of chunky sneakers for the urban city look.
Yeah. And now I'm just writing. Sometimes it helps, especially if you're adding so many things now to the context, to just at the end say, okay, here is now where your job starts. So sales description : so then it should just add it below. So just a little kind of hack. And then, well, I mean, it actually now follows quite closely. When in doubt, wear a floral dress. It's a classic look for spring, a perfect choice for a cool and timeless look. wear this dress with your favorite pair of red sneakers. So it kept that, what we told, for a relaxed and stylish look. So yeah, definitely it's a bit more salesy and actually quite in line with the example that we gave. So of course, if you want to have a bit more variety, you can give it maybe 2-3 examples. You can also do it if you, it depends of course on your brand. If you want to go a bit more, even more extreme, you can say also something like write in the style of Hemingway. So you basically reference a certain writer. Let's see. Yeah, so that's very Hemingway, very kind of to the point. A dress, floor pink, green, lightweight fabric. So more actually like a poem.
Exactly. But I think what's on the mind of a lot of, let's say, digital responsibles or brand managers is like, to what extent can we now make our process more effective and more efficient? Can we reduce cost, and to what extent? It feels like, based on what we've seen today, especially for the sales description, you would still need maybe a person to over have an oversight of the outputs, make sure that even though you guide it, like, here's for example how it could sound, and give it examples, that you still want to have certain dynamic feel from one product description to another style's product description, so it's not kind of the same exactly, but still also not go too far out. Do you think that this is something that can be automized with any of the AI models in combinations in any time soon, or will it still require someone to have a guiding hand?
I think at this point, I mean, especially with everything that is customer facing, of course, you probably want to be careful because it's about your brand. You don't want to write things that you're not really behind. So I think at this point, you can certainly, I mean, you will need some time to spend on, well, kind of tuning this, as we just did. Once you found it, you can, I think, use it to create a lot of, let's say drafts. And I think usually a lot of them will already be pretty much where you say, okay, why not? Go ahead. But still, I mean, once in a while, I think you have to be careful that there might be some where it is maybe a bit too creative or really simply makes a mistake. That you still have there some process where you at least manually check them. You can, I mean, there are some things you can actually also automate before. I mean, one thing you can actually do is to say, create, you set it up that you create for each style, for each product, you create several of these. So when you saw, I mean, the temperature, so if I submit, I get a bit different one. So you can, for example, say, okay, just create 3-4 of these. And then you have another step after where you again use a language model and say, okay, here's the image. Here are 4 drafts of sales description. Which of these is the best one? And then you let it kind of judge. So it's a kind of a very typical setup. You have several creator models, and then you have one sort of judge model that then judges this. But even then, I think I would still have that manual step in the end where it's still let one responsible person just kind of approve it. But you can, I think, reduce the workload quite a bit.
I also assume that you can provide it with multiple images, so from the back side, from the front, and so on, in case there are certain patterns, logos, and prints, that it takes that into consideration when classifying or labeling, captioning the items. But as you said, I think it's very important to be aware that even though there are all of these models, that you really think through the process, make sure that it goes through certain process with rules and guidance, not necessarily manual, but that there are some examples and so on, and then hopefully in the end, we should also mention that with the fine tuning in place as well, so that the AI already from start understands your past 2-3 years worth of product descriptions and the way you label stuff. I think in the end, I personally believe still would be 90-95% as good as any other intern that you might hire to write these stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. But thank you so much, Steffen. And
likewise.
Yeah, see you in the next session.
Absolutely. All right.